Lovely. So it's always go nice and easy as you start off, particularly the morning session like this. To begin with, let's just warm up a little bit with the self massage movement, rubbing your hands together and then just pads your fingers, tapping over your face. Work up over your head and neck. Down from you. And the shoulder. A nice steady rhythm in the movement. Put your head onto your back, just as much of your back as you can comfortably get to. Don't strain for this. Not too heavy a movement on the lower back and kidneys. Around your hips and your legs. Your belly and your head to the shoulder. So those are quite nice little movements just to help you wake up, warm up a little bit, and to start this process that is so important in Tai Chi. Just bring your attention into your body. Now, standing with your feet hip width apart and just beginning to turn in this central part of your body, hips, waist. It's nice and easy. And remember, we're looking for a posture that enables movement. Movement that we can see and experience, you know, like on the outside, arms and shoulders nice and loose. And also the feeling of movement within the body, the flow, the energy, the patterns of movement, expansion, contraction, and so on and so forth. So gradually coming into that posture to whatever sort of point is appropriate to you, appropriate to your experience and how you're feeling at the moment. Bringing yourself more into line with the pull of gravity. So you're leaning forwards or leaning backwards, you will find yourself in a struggle with gravity. And just trying to let your center of gravity sink, as though your pelvis were hanging from the spine. And in practice, what we're moving towards is to have our weight a little bit forwards in our feet. So the focal point for your weight would end up being just behind the ball of each foot, which does in fact leave you with that slight angling forwards, which is corrected. It's a very simple idea, but just corrected by allowing your hips to drop down. We don't force a correction. Having said it's very simple, it's also a very tricky correction to make, I think, because it involves releasing some of the tightness in the body. It can be a sort of few moments of uncertainty as you sort of, am I going to fall over or whatever, because we're so used to that tightness that it feels that we're losing something that we need. So nice and gently, and also recognize that the simple correction that I've just described actually is quite profound in the body. It begins to take the effort of holding the weight of our body off joints like our knees and our hips. And it asks the muscles of the legs in particular, but elsewhere in the body as well, to work a bit harder. So we can't overlook the element of physical conditioning. And that is obviously something that builds up with time and with regular practice. So we want to both have a sense of this is where we're trying to get to, but also a sense of what is appropriate now. As we become more familiar with Tai Chi, we get glimpses of how it can feel. And so This, this gradually builds into an aspiration, an intention. We know, we have a slight idea of what we're looking for. And we gradually build an awareness in mind and body of how we get there. But we can drop our center of gravity in the way that I described when we root down in Tai Chi terms. We become more stable, and there's less need for parts of the body, particularly the upper part of the body, to carry extra weight. That helps with this feeling of releasing tightness in the soft tissue of the body and the joints. And that, in its turn, helps with coming into alignment with the full gravity. All of this is done deliberately, consciously, with a conscious intention. So we're beginning to bring together three elements, sometimes referred to as the three treasures of Tai Chi, of our body, obviously, the physical side of the art, our minds, our awareness, in all aspects of that, our thoughts, our feelings, sensations, and so on, tensions, and finally the movement itself, flow, those patterns of expansion and contraction, the sense of rhythm, perhaps. All of these things leading us to an awareness of the internal movement, the internal flow of energy. When this begins to work for us, there's a sense of those three elements coming together with a harmonious quality about them, feeling settling, quieting, grounding in mind and body. Just letting that attention to these various factors come to the foreground of your mind. And in doing so, that just means that many other things that are impinging on us in our minds, our thoughts, the things going on in our lives, just take a back seat. They don't go away. We're not trying to push them away or anything like that. We're just switching the focus on our attention. This movement illustrates some of the really key factors of our posture, how we move. So we can, for instance, you see, in this stance, my knees are slightly curved. If I pull them back, and be careful as you do this, but as they lock up, actually my hips lock up as well, my lower back locks up, and the movement becomes more of a struggle. And we can see that very clearly, I think, with this exercise, because we're going a bit faster. It's not always so obvious, I think, in the slower movements. When we can get that sense of a freer movement in the center of our body, then we can begin to appreciate how, when we move in the center of the body, it actually has an effect all the way through the body, particularly up into the upper body and the arms. So this furthers our awareness and our sense of focusing, that we focus in a central way on that center part of the body and from there down into the ground. All of these aspects respond to practice, whether it be through the conditioning of our muscles, tendons, and ligaments, or whether we're talking about the effects that the focusing has on our nervous system. And that again brings us back to aspects of practice. These are the foundations that we build the rest of the art on. Now just turn your hands palm out, raise them up just a little bit, no higher than your shoulders. So slightly more structured, but try not to stiffen up in your arms or your hands, your shoulders. And then now this introduces another key factor, which is that we move from the ground. We often have a bias in our attention to the upper part of our body. This is quite normal and quite natural for human beings, I think. But there's a readjustment rather than feeling that we have to, say, for instance, push forwards with our shoulders. We can begin by just thinking in terms of pushing gently against the ground. After a while, we begin to become aware that it's not so much a push as it is a dropping of our weight down into the ground, into our legs, and our legs develop a springiness. So we're being sort of almost bounced forwards and backwards. So this feeds us back into an awareness of our root. If our center of gravity is high up in our body, this isn't going to happen. We need to sink down. So the root is certainly crucial in terms of our stability, but it is also more than that. It's often something that we're aware of the source of the movement. The sinking down loads the legs, and then we get a sense of a movement upwards, forwards, backwards. Imagine doing this on something like a trampoline or a bouncy castle. You're getting close to the sort of feel that we're looking at. And then on the other side, and gently forwards and backwards. And notice how your center responds to the change from one leg to another. Your front foot's pointing forwards, back foot is turned out a little bit, and again, it's quite natural for our body to turn. Not concerned at this point about which way it turns. Just notice whether you're turning in the direction of the foot that you're moving to, or whether perhaps you're turning the other way. And we should recognize that there is often good reason for things that we don't feel that we're getting right. There can be all sorts of historical reasons for that. It might just be that we're not quite ready for it at this particular point. And we should respect that and not force any change in body, but rather seek to understand what is going on and to cultivate the changes. So in a way, if you're a gardener and you've got a plant and it's not growing very well, you don't just rip it out or sort of batter it around or anything like that. You try and think about, well, why is it? Does it need feeding? Does it need watering? Is it in the right place and the right soil and so on and so forth? It's a gradual process, a gentle process. So standing with your feet directly below your hips, so you feel that there's a support for your upper body here. Take a couple of slow, gentle breaths and just be aware of that feeling of your weight, of the pull of gravity flowing down through your body. Again, see if you can just let your hips drop back. You see there's a very slight curve in my knees. And then just letting your hips drop back a little bit more. That curve in the knees will obviously become more pronounced. And then once again, we feel our legs beginning to push us up. Don't force yourself down. Allow yourself to drop down and just recognize the point at which your legs will push you up. And then see if you can let this settle into a nice steady rhythm. As we become more experienced with this and as our body conditions to these movements, then we will find that we start to get a posture that is, to a degree, more physically deeper. Maybe your knees bending a little bit more, but also internally it feels deeper. It's not just a case of how far your knees are bending. Bringing your hands around as though you're cradling a ball, and this time that rise in movement, that rise in energy, expanding through your upper body, pushing the ball up, and then let your hips drop down, your arms up. This is the exercise rooting down. One of the important aspects of mind we bring into the movement is the use of imagery. We begin to recognize that our bodies are very responsive to images, either consciously or unconsciously. So if we can find the right image, one that works for us, it can have a profound effect on our movements and on our posture. And one of the most common and one of the most fundamental images that we use in Tai Chi is to move as though we're moving through water. As one well-known teacher commented, it's like swimming on dry land. When we do that, we slip into a way of moving that is less stiff, less tight, particularly in the joints of the body. And this is one of the characteristics of the movement in Tai Chi. So it was a useful image to you, as though you're moving through water. Another way of putting it is as though the air around you were thicker than. Not every image is going to work for you, so don't feel that something doesn't make sense and you necessarily affect it. But with this one, just looking to really build that sense of releasing downwards, your center of gravity downwards, and then recognizing the point at which you get the opposite effect, that sense of a push up. And this becomes a very crucial and constant dynamic in Tai Chi, that there is always the pull of gravity, and there is always a sense in which we're trying to allow that to happen freely, to yield to that. And there was always some kind of response from our body, hopefully not a tightening up, but a response that eventually begins to push us up. This is a constant thing, and so it's a very important energetic cycle. Now this time, as you get to the bottom of the movement, rotate your arms so your fingers begin to point out, and let the expansion push your arms out. Notice how they gently swing up and then pressing down. This is a movement called the wild goose. So it may be that the image of the bird in flight offers some kind of quality to you. Another way of thinking of this, again, if you imagine you're in water, and this time you have a little ball underneath each hand. So what you're trying to do is you push up, you're allowing the balls to float up, but not too quickly. And then as you sink down, you're again pressing the ball down into water. Wild goose, sometimes referred to as the wild goose fly. I sometimes think that if you can imagine having a big feather in your hand and just waving it up in the air, the feather offers some resistance to the air, but not a total resistance, and it gives just a little bit. Again, I think that is also a quality that we find in the movements in Tai Chi. And then letting your hands drop down, same thing in your hips, and cross over, pushing up. This is parting the clouds. It's like the sun coming out. Nice and easy. Don't overdo this movement. Try not to pull your hands back behind your head, and don't stretch up. Push up. You should always feel at the end of the movement that you have a little bit of space to move a bit further. And that spaciousness is very important, because it's one of the things that allows for that inner movement to work in a very fluid way. This time, as you come down, tuck your hands under and go back to the first exercise, rooting down, and just building these three movements that we've just done into a sequence. Down at the bottom, don't rush to change over, just rotate your hands out, go into the wild goose. And then party. There are many sequences in Tai Chi. A lot of them are quite complex, quite long sequences. This is a very short, simple one. But we can get that sense of a flow from one movement to another. We also begin to appreciate the subtle changes from one movement to another. There's common ground between all of these movements. And yet when we start to focus on those internal patterns, we realize that each movement also carries its own individual qualities. This further draws our attention into our body. As we become more experienced with this, then we can begin to bring a quality of intentionality to those internal changes. So for those of you more familiar with the exercises, there can be a shift from an attention to the outside movements that produce the internal movements, to the other way around, that it's the internal changes that become intentional, that influence and produce the larger, more visible outer movements. Both are important. So when we build this into the sequence, we can begin to just be aware of that possibility as we get more experience. You know, maybe just thinking, as you change from parting the clouds to rooting down, where would you expect to find the response within the body? And just as an example of that, it might not be, it's not the only possibility, but as you do the rooting down, just focusing on that area of your belly, lower back, feeling the expansion there predominantly, and then the contraction. As you begin the wild goose, the same thing, but it moves up a little bit towards your solar plexus, and then apart in the clouds, belly, solar plexus. One more round. Now letting your hands drop down, feeling the weight of your arms hanging from the shoulders, focusing on one side of your body. So your hand gets pushed up there. Wind your arm around as though you're plucking a soft fruit off a tree. And then pull down. This is called Dragon Plucks the Stars. Change sides. Try not to rush change over. If you find that you are at a third point of awareness in, which is the belly, you expand and contract through one side of your body, let your arm come down the whole way, and then focus your attention into your belly and then to the other side. Notice that the movement builds in exactly the same way as we were looking at earlier. Belly, that area of the body that middle part of the body and then up towards the rib cage and chest. And then draining. One more time. Sinking down, but then just let your hips come up a little bit so you're in that slightly higher posture. Still, it's like curving your knees, still allowing free passage for the grounding. Hands at your sides. And then from there, just gently touching your hips. Pushing up a little bit above your head, palms facing upwards, and then back down, all the way down, and just lightly letting your hands touch against you. Push up again, push out, and this time turn. So that redirects your hands, and then coming back. Your hands rest on your hips. In the other direction. And back. Make a point of just gently touching the hips with the side of your hand. And it's called pushing in four directions. So several things to note about this. One is the rhythm of the movement. We can feel very clearly here there's an expansion followed by a contraction. We want them to be as equal in length as possible. The second is this important area of the body, the center of the body, guiding the direction of your hands, not twisting your back around, not twisting your shoulders around. Once again, more of an emphasis on the lower part of the body than on arms and hands. They follow the movement, follow the pattern of expansion and contraction, turning. Another is that this exercise quite naturally, you're paying attention, brings that attention back to your center and from there down into the ground. So by looking for these qualities of being more grounded, more centered, this is a good exercise to practice. And I think this is that grounding quality, that centered quality is one of the big benefits that we get from it. One more time. This moment when your hands just touch the sides of your hips is very important. It helps to stop us rushing ahead. Just allowing us the space to pay attention to each stage of the movement. Be very present in the movement. That's a difficult thing to sustain, you know, in our busy lives. Last time. Letting your hands drop down. And then with the next expansion through belly, solar plexus and chest on one side of the body. Letting that push your hand out, and it springs up until it's in line with your nose and straight down. Your arm drop down, feel the weight of your arm, and then again. Sit the belly, solar plexus, chest, the expansion, pushing your arm out, and then small. And this time, when your hand gets to the top, if it's comfortable for you, once again you turn. Once again, that moves your arm across slightly. Simple circling palms. Small. Making the point of giving yourself time and space to fully complete each movement. Change sides. The habit of rushing is very common. You may want to feel you want to get on with this and maybe just only half finish the movement. Movements are done as slowly as we're comfortable doing them. And we're just letting our minds slow down. You know, not going to sleep or anything like that, hopefully. And then adding the turn. Now, once again, letting your hips drop back a little bit more and then push up. As we do this so far, when we've done it, you let the hips drop back, and that means that the pelvis stays fairly level. This time, very carefully, as you sink down, push your hips back so the pelvis, the center tilts, and that means that your head and shoulders go forwards. Let gravity pull down on your hips, with your head coming up nice and easily and gently, and pushing. So this is a vertical rotation in the center of the body. You see how it affects the alignment of our body. Listen, your arms follow. And this is a movement called rowing a boat in the middle of the lake. I'm doing this quite big, hopefully, so you can see what I'm doing mechanically, but recognize it's a strong exercise on both your knees and on your back. So you're nice and easy, just as far as you're comfortable. Remember, at the end of the movement, the furthest extent of the movement, you should really be feeling that there's a space for more movement. Gentle extension to the back, spine, arms and fingers. All that we're looking for. Rowing a boat in the middle of the lake. One more time. And then bring your hands palm down. Turn in one direction. Now push your hips back, and that pushes your hands forwards. Swing across, drawing your arms around. Come back to the upright. Turn back. And then same thing in the other direction. This is called polishing the table. Once again, very carefully, gently. I turn around from the back, and again, I'm exaggerating somewhat here. This is how my hips go back, and then swinging across. Letting the hips drop down, come into the upright position, and turn into it. Polishing the table. Try not to stiffen in the shoulders. One more time. And let your hands. Give your hands a little shake. Your legs a shake. The phrase often found in Tai Chi is that the movement is rooted in the beat, that dropping of the center of gravity and that expansion and contraction that comes out of that. Transmitted to our legs, and we've seen how that works in two different ways. Guided, directed, controlled through the center of our body. This is crucial. This is where we bring our attention to think of it almost like a telephone exchange or one of these big internet servers. We pass through this each time. Our intention focuses through this, and the awareness of what's happening and say our hands come back into that. So there's this connection between our heads. We often see a head and brain as being where the mind is, and this central part of the body. And then finally, the movement is expressed through our upper body and arms. And we try and maintain this the whole way through. Standing once again with your feet hip width apart, as much as possible, your toes pointing forwards. 50% of your weight in each leg, but of that 50%, ideally, 70% is in the front half of your foot, and that again encourages this slight sense of just settling. And everything we begin to associate with that in terms of becoming centered, grounded. We associate this posture with a sense of stillness, a sense of calmness that is something that that is characteristic of all of them. Now, imagining parallel lines between your feet. Turn your left foot out. So try and mirror my movements. You can play about with that. Step forwards on the parallel line with your right foot. Try and have your toes pointing straight ahead, front toes pointing straight ahead. And as I say, you can play around with that as well. Angle at the back. People more experienced than this want to be trying to think in terms of being able to face directly forwards. Newer people to this and more experienced people, you might find you're slightly offline. Be careful about how you correct that. We don't want to put a strain on our knees because our knees could twist in or out. And we don't want to put a strain on our back or shoulder. So it's not the end of the world if you're slightly offline, but it is something to think about moving towards correcting. Either way, now just once again begin to transfer your weight from front to back. Pay a little bit more attention to this process. The phrase often used is that the legs fill up and empty. So as I go forwards, it's like pouring water into a glass. I feel the pressure in the sole of my foot, and it gradually builds up towards my feet. And then as I go back, once again, we begin to feel the response in our leg. It presses and expands. And once again, as your weight lands in each leg, just giving yourself a moment to feel that. The movements of the Tai Chi, the exercises and the forms are punctuated by these moments. They're like commas in a sentence. You don't exactly stop, but there is just this sort of little space there. One of the other phrases that I really love from the Tai Chi classic writings is the one where it urges us to, in the translation that I love best, is to seek the stillness within the movement. So this is not either or, and it's that willingness to just rest, to settle, to wait until we feel the push up that actually enhances the movement. The center part of our body, from hips and pelvis to waist, is sometimes described as being like the center, the hub of a wheel. Maybe a bicycle or a car or some kind of vehicle. You'll know that the hub of the wheel is fixed. It's fixed into the frame of the vehicle. It's still, essentially. And it's that very stillness that enables the rotation of the wheel. If you ride a bike and the wheel comes loose, you pretty soon grind to a halt. So although it's a very dynamic art in lots of ways, it's also an art that helps to cultivate that quietness, that stillness, that spaciousness. It's not either or, because without the movement, there's no expression for that spaciousness. There's no way that we can bring it into to the movement of our lives. Just recognize it's hard to get out of that habit of rushing, of trying to do more than one thing at once. When your thoughts get distracted, when you lose that sense of stillness, don't 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 sort of strain, just very gently bring your attention back, to gather your attention. As you settle into your back foot now, raise your toes, a bit more of your weight will flow down through your back leg. Now you can have the front foot. Go forwards, push your back knee forwards, and again you settle down more into front leg. We're looking to build up percentage of weight in this leg until we can become aware that our upper body and our head come more directly into line with our supporting. Hips are dropping back, pelvis is level, we're sinking down, we're rooting down. And the combination begins to make us feel much more stable, either on two legs, as we've already discovered, but this time on just the one leg. So now bring your foot back, your weight back, and then bring the front foot in. Step out, put the heel down, lower the toes, gently press the foot in to the ground and go forwards. Bring the back foot in. When you step back, put the ball of the foot down first, then the heel gently pressing. This is described as planting. Try not to think in terms of balance. Don't hold your arms out or stiffen up. We're stable because of the root, because of the alignment of the body, because of the way our hips drop back. So we essentially, rather than tensing up, we achieve stability by releasing. And if that's difficult for you, and it is a difficult thing to do, maybe try here. I've got my hand on the wall, and that gives me just a little bit of security. Think, well, what happens if I do release, relaxing a little bit in my hips and so on and so forth. Without the sort of possibility that, oh, I might fall over, which is going to be something that causes you to tense. Shake it. Try all that on the other side. So go back to the parallel stance. Step forwards with your left foot. Once again, basic transfer of your weight, filling and emptying. Maybe still with that feeling of moving through water. Beginning to raise toes and heel. Again, we can use different images. There's often a tendency to lean. We can maybe just gently neutralize that with a feeling that, you know, absolutely, like our pelvis is a bowl full of water. We don't want to spill the water. Stepping in and planting the then stepping through. So you go forwards or backwards, trying to keep the width of your step, planting the foot. Just giving yourself a few moments to reflect on this everyday process of walking. And then going back. Okay. Go back to having your right foot forward. Now we bring the upper body and arms back into the movement, starting with your weight on the back foot. Hold your hands over your leg. As you push forwards, let that movement coming up from the leg, push your elbows out and drawing your fingers apart, do the opening up in your chest, and then relax. It's called pigeon spreads its wings. I'll show you from the side here. Don't pull your arms right back behind your shoulders. Don't take them above shoulder. Feeling the alternate contraction and expansion between the front and back of your upper body. You may find that the pattern of expansion and contraction begins to harmonize with the breathing. It does that quite naturally sometimes. If it doesn't, let your body just breathe however it's comfortable. But just be aware that that pattern of expansion that we noted earlier, that we can feel in this exercise, we feel the expansion in our belly, in our solar plexus, in our chest, is also the pattern that we want to try and cultivate for our breathing. The in-breath effectively starts with a gentle feeling of expansion. Again, that should never be forced. Really just aware that this is, once again, something that we aspire to. So pigeon spreads its wings. One more time. This time, as you go back, let your arms drop down again, recognize that they're quite heavy. Push forwards, and then as you settle in the front, put your arms following through, and then same idea of going back. Again, as though you're moving through water. This is called fisherman castanet. I'm not trying to lift my hands. They will naturally swing up because they're attached to my shoulder. Those of you who are more familiar with these exercises, once again, good opportunity to really bring your attention inside your body, where are the patterns of expansion and contraction. One more time. And then as you come back, bring your hands in to your hips a little bit, palms facing forwards. This is called pushing wave. This time, that movement, that wave-like movement from the back foot pushes your elbows forwards, and once again, your arms naturally swing up. This has a stronger feel, both in its intention and in the physical nature of the exercise. The push comes from your foot through your leg. It's not your shoulders, it's not your arms. Don't overextend your arms, don't overdo the effort that you're making in your upper body in the gym. Do one more of these. Push forward, let your hands flatten out, and as you come back, hands drop down and you turn, and that swings your hands out, and then you go forwards, hands drop down, and as you arrive in the front leg, you turn to your right. This is called wind blows the winds. Once again, letting the movement, your weight, the patterns of expansion and contraction through your body, move your arms forward. It's like a wave coming up underneath it. Expanding, contracting, expanding as you turn, contracting as you shake it. Once again, let's do those 4 movements on the other side. So from the parallel stance, turning your right foot out, step on the parallel line with your left foot, drop your weight into your back foot and pigeon split its wings. Expanding in the front of your body, maybe with gentle in-breath, and as you go back, just feel the expansion pushing. So you're moving through the not overdoing the movement. So I'm changing to fisherman castanet, letting your hands drop down. And then seeing how they swing through. This wave-like movement. The wave begins in the back foot, drops down to finish in the front. One more time. And back, changing now to slightly stronger feeling, pushing wave. So our whole body, that body and mind, really focused into the movements rather than just stay with our shoulders or our back or our legs. Sense of gathering together, defragmentation perhaps of body, mind, and energy. As you go back this time, just let the hands flatten and sink back. Turn direction to front foot. Turn forwards, hands drop down, swing. Wind blows through. Now we can combine this with the stepping that we were doing. Go into your front foot, and as you turn, the back knee fold in, bring that foot in, or you could do this if the space is behind you going back. Plant the foot, move forwards, drop your hands down, turn in, and let that turn, swing your arms around, and bring the empty foot in. This is called Dragonfly Skims the Water. This time I'm going to change direction. So again, you plant the foot. Take your time. It's a tricky movement. Now, changing direction again. You can carry on doing it in exactly the same way. If it feels appropriate, don't take unnecessary risks. You may be able to raise the leg up. You need to do that without tilting the pants. Notice that I always bring my foot in before I raise it. And then stepping back. One more time. And once again, breathing. With all of these movements, and perhaps particularly with that last one, we will experience times of wobbling. And one of the things that we learn in Tai Chi, one of the things that I've learned over the years in Tai Chi, is that we can experience these wobbles in all sorts of ways in our lives, but that we can come back. And this last exercise really kind of illustrates that, I think, how we can, reach out, but also turn. Coming back to this parallel posture, the Chinese term Zhongding describes the quality of this posture. And one of the images for it is of a mountain. Mountains are quite strong and deep roots. There's a sense of spaciousness with a mountain. It can be a stillness, but also a very dynamic quality. So it's quite an interesting image if it works for you. This last exercise is called Embrace Tiger, Return to the Mountain. So let your hips drop down and then pushing up. And again, the expansion, pushing your arms away from the body. But this time we embrace the tiger. You bring your hands around as though you're going to hold a ball against your chest. You're feeling the pull of gravity, drawing your hands in and then sinking down and returning, letting your hands drop to their depth. And then beginning the whole process again. Giving us a chance just to reflect on this process of returning. Returning to the root. Returning just for a moment to that sense of stillness, of spaciousness, of calmness, of centeredness. It's worth reflecting on just how that works for you, what is useful to you. You want to just sort of think, well, I'll remember that later in the day when I'm frustrated about something or feels though life's getting on top of me. Maybe there's something in this exercise for you to just take away. Just one more time. And just stand for a moment. Maybe if it helps, take a couple of slows. Relationship. Lovely. As always, thank you very much, everybody who's either joined in live or is watching on later on YouTube. And as always, please feel free to contact me if you have any questions. But bye for now. Oh, just to remind people, there won't be a class next Monday, which is the bank holiday.